I've been supporting Candace Owens. Because Candace, as you know, had a very big role with Turning Point USA. And she has been very adamant about bringing down that organization. Not just necessarily because of the fact that Erica Kirk is so transparently corrupt. It's also the underlings, which we have covered time and again with this organization. And when you think about somebody, for instance, like Thomas Massie, who I do hope is going to, if anybody is going to provide a populist America First run at the presidency in 28, it's him. And as such, one really has to wonder how an organization like Turning Point USA, if you know what its original incarnation was under Charlie Kirk, you would also know that Charlie is a huge supporter, was a huge supporter of Thomas Massie. But lo and behold, we go through this whole process of the assassination, and then little Ben and his organization, among others, write 7-figure checks, and then the entire organization. I covered it earlier this evening, Kenman. When you go under their wing, you don't come out from under it. You do exactly as you're told. And this is exactly what happened. Turning Point USA was questioned as to why they didn't provide any support for Thomas Massie. Yet they provided a lot of support for Ken Paxton, who just won his Senate primary against John Cornyn, because the Trump administration blessed Ken Paxton. So they were confronted, and they decided to respond. No tears for Cornyn, absolutely not.
To know a little bit more about the Thomas Massie loss, and what's your thoughts on that?
I got so many thoughts. It's interesting, David. I've been accused, I think the organization's been accused, Erica's been accused of betraying Charlie by not coming out and endorsing one way or the other and not being more involved in that race. I will tell you, and I haven't said this publicly, but and I know this isn't necessarily a question, but it's an opportunity to address it. But, after the One Big Beautiful Bill vote, and I want to respect Charlie's privacy as well. It's always the tension in all of this. There's private conversations. Charlie was a fan of Thomas Massie, especially historically, liked him on war, liked him on being a budget hawk and spending. But he was pretty frustrated that Massie didn't vote in the affirmative on the Big Beautiful Bill.
Now, anybody who knows anything about the really big, beautiful bill that we put together, this was as much a corporate giveaway as any bill that you will ever see. And if there's one thing that we know about Charlie Kirk, is that he was a true believer. He had very strong conservative Christian libertarian principles that he fought to build his organization around. Now, of course, as Jen and I have pointed out, he eventually woke up one day and realized he was never in control. It was not his to control. Once they realized how to use him, they used him until he started asking questions, and then he had to be told how things really are, and he decided that he wasn't going to be party to it. The idea that they want to denigrate him in death, and the fact that Erica knows that what they're doing is denigrating him in death, it's pretty sinister, and it's pretty evil. And as such, to suggest that Charlie lost interest of supporting Thomas Massie because he wouldn't support the big, beautiful corruption bill, yeah, I think that's probably a lie. Pretty big lie, by the way. But if you're going to lie, why lie small? You might as well go big or go home. As Hitler once said, the bigger the lie, the more people will be convinced it's the truth. And this is an example of whitewashing in the worst way. I highly doubt that Charlie Kirk was in support of the big, beautiful bill. Maybe he said he was. But when you really understand what the language was, you would understand why Thomas Massie was vehemently against it. And that's the difference between somebody who thinks and somebody who capitulates and goes along to get along. And the average MAGA supporter today is nothing more than a pleb and an acolyte for the genocidal cause. Because they don't ask questions. They do believe in a monarch, or they at least believe in a dictatorship. Maybe they believe in a monarchy, I'm not sure. But in reality, even if an instinct is telling them that what they believe is wrong, they will never say it publicly. They will go right along with it because it's, again, the fish out of water problem. Somebody speaks up in a congregation. It isn't, oh, wow, that person really made a great point. Instead, that person is an evil, despicable heretic that must be silenced. And so in this case, they're being told through the pro-Israel money that now controls this organization, only use Charlie as we tell you to use him. Never reveal that Charlie was somebody different than the person you are now continuing to rewrite his history as well as his legacy. Not one that I necessarily agreed with. But this is an example of doing just that.
Because it was essentially the totality of President Trump's first-year agenda wrapped into one bill. And I will just say, privately, Charlie was really, really frustrated.
Yeah, I think that's the right way to put it. And I think he would have become more frustrated over the events of the past 9 months, which is, we liked what Massie said. We liked his libertarian credentials. We liked him making the debt clock that ran on the little
and I
lapel
still like
pin.
Massie.
And there's so many things to like about him, but he has, especially over the past few months, he's become the #1, let's put it, Republican gadfly, Republican who gets in Trump's way, criticizes Trump, and not just on debt or the war, but also on Epstein, saying that where there's this pedophile class that Trump is allied to, essentially. And I think Charlie would have been, as you said, very frustrated. He would have, and Charlie was not a guy who would feud publicly. He would have certainly been messaging Massie about that and being like, what's going on here?
Yeah.
And he would have been very concerned with it.
Well,
we don't know exactly what he'd say.
Yeah, I don't know
but that's
either.
Us being honest about it.
Yeah, but I will.
There is nothing honest about what they are saying. If there is one thing that we hope to do with our channel, our small but mighty channel, it is to be a part of the effort to break Turning Point USA. And as JFK once said, splinter it into 1,000 tiny pieces into basically into nothingness. And that's what they deserve. And make no mistake, this is all done for money and power, for however long they can keep it going, because it's not going to last. Much like our broken system. Andrew Kolvet, Blake Neff, Erica Kirk, anyone that is under the thumb of Little Ben and his cohorts and any of the Zionist donor class, they eventually will run out of real estate in terms of support for their organization. This won't last. Frankly, I think if Thomas Massie decided to start his own organization to rival Turning Point USA, he would draw millions of supporters in pretty quickly. Somebody has to create I don't want to say a mirror organization because that's not right. But you can take elements of what was working for Turning Point USA before they completely sold out and make it into your own by creating an organization that actually benefits everyday people in this country. They had a great setup, but they got greedy. So you don't actually need organizations like these. In fact, I don't even know what the hell they do now that is actually of any value. Do they just talk shit about Democrats or progressives? My guess is that that's probably all they do. It's like one big Libs of TikTok channel. So hopefully, sooner rather than later, they'll no longer be relevant.